March 2025, Norwegian Sea. A Russian cruiser detects missile launch from a frigate 100 miles away. Flight time, approximately 12 minutes. The cruiser's captain does exactly what doctrine demands. He turns hard to port, increases speed to 28 knots, deploys electronic warfare, launches decoys, and continues maneuvering unpredictably. 30 degrees starboard, then 45 degrees port, varying speed, changing course every 90 seconds. In 12 minutes of violent maneuvering, the cruiser travels 8 miles from where it started. The missile was aimed at a position the ship occupied when it launched. That position is now empty ocean. Traditional missiles would search that empty ocean, find nothing, and either self-destruct or continue to a pre-programmed backup target. Wasted shot, mission failure. This missile doesn't search empty ocean. 8 minutes into flight, it receives updated coordinates from satellite and airborne sensors tracking the cruiser's movements. The missile recalculates, adjusts course 40 degrees, continues toward where the ship is now, not where it was. 4 minutes later, terminal phase begins. The cruiser has maneuvered again. Different heading, different speed. The missile's imaging infrared seeker activates, scanning the sea surface. It identifies 6 radar returns, the cruiser, 3 escorts, and 2 merchant vessels transiting nearby. The missile's onboard computer analyzes thermal signatures, radar profiles, and movement patterns. It eliminates the merchants, wrong size, wrong speed. It eliminates the escorts, too small. It locks the cruiser and adjusts trajectory for intercept. The cruiser turns hard again. Emergency maneuver. Maximum G loading. The missile corrects mid-turn, predicting where the ship will be based on current turn rate and speed. Not chasing where the target is, anticipating where it's going. Impact occurs 30 seconds later, not where the cruiser was when the missile launched, not where it was during mid-course correction, where it ended up after 12 minutes of evasive maneuvering designed specifically to defeat missile attacks. This is the Naval Strike Missile, the anti-ship weapon that corrects itself against moving targets. And the reason it's deadly has nothing to do with speed or warhead size. It's about what happens when missiles think faster than ships can maneuver, when autonomous systems predict evasion better than humans can execute it, and when every defensive tactic that worked against old missiles becomes the behavior that guarantees new missiles hit. Let me show you why self-correcting guidance changes naval warfare, how missiles track targets through violent evasion, and why the smartest missiles aren't the fastest ones. They're the ones that know where you're going before you get there. The problem is time and distance. Ships move, not quickly by aircraft standards, but consistently. A destroyer traveling at 30 knots covers half a mile per minute. In the 10 to 15 minutes a subsonic cruise missile takes to reach its target, that destroyer travels 5 to 7 miles. Launch a missile at coordinates where the target is now, and by the time the weapon arrives, the target has moved. Missed distance could be miles. The missile seeker might not even detect the ship if it's outside sensor range when entering the target area. Traditional solutions involve firing multiple missiles to cover the probable location spread. Launch 4 missiles programmed for positions north, south, east, and west of the target's last known location. One should get close enough for terminal seekers to acquire. That works. But it's inefficient. You're firing 4 missiles to guarantee 1 hit. And if the target maneuvers unpredictably or deploys effectively, even saturation doesn't guarantee success. The mathematics favor defenders. They know when missiles launch, radar detects them, electronic warfare identifies them. Defensive doctrine calculates probable flight paths and times. Evasive maneuvers can be timed to maximize missed distance. Turn perpendicular to the missile's approach 30 seconds before it arrives. The missile is committed to a trajectory calculated for your previous heading. You're now moving away from that trajectory at maximum speed. By the time the missile reaches where you were, you're a mile away in a different direction. Repeat this every minute, and traditional missiles cannot compensate. Their guidance is locked. Their trajectory is fixed. They fly where they were told to fly and find empty ocean because the target was smarter than the weapon. That problem defined anti-ship missile warfare for decades. Launch enough missiles to saturate defenses and ensure some hit despite evasion. Accept that most will miss. Hope that a few successes are enough. The Naval Strike Missile destroys that calculation completely. Designed by Norway's Kongsberg Defence and Aerospace and entering service in 2012, NSM was built from the beginning as a solution to the moving target problem. Not through speed, the missile is subsonic at approximately Mach 0.9, but through intelligence. The missile is 13 feet long, weighs 900 pounds at launch, and carries a 275-pound high explosive penetrator warhead. Range exceeds 115 miles depending on flight profile, extending to 155 plus miles in extended range variants. But those specifications are secondary. The revolutionary aspect is the guidance architecture that allows continuous correction throughout flight. NSM uses a three-phase guidance system. Initial phase relies on inertial navigation and GPS for general course toward the target area. Mid-course phase accepts external updates and recalculates trajectory. Terminal phase uses autonomous sensors for final targeting and intercept. Each phase corrects for target movement, and together they create a missile that tracks ships through evasion maneuvers that would defeat any weapon relying on pre-programmed coordinates alone. The inertial navigation system is sophisticated beyond typical cruise missiles. Ring laser gyroscopes detect rotation in 3 axes with precision measured in thousandths of a degree. Accelerometers measure velocity changes in 3 dimensions. The missile knows exactly where it is at every moment during flight, knows its speed, altitude, heading, and position relative to launch point. That positional awareness is the foundation for everything else. Because you can't correct course if you don't know where you are. GPS provides updates, but GPS can be jammed or spoofed. Inertial navigation is jam-proof. It doesn't rely on external signals. Even if GPS is denied, NSM maintains accurate navigation throughout flight. And accurate navigation means accurate course corrections. If the missile knows it's 50 miles from target at bearing 045 and speed 550 miles per hour, it can calculate that reaching the target requires continuing current heading for 5.45 minutes. If new targeting data places the ship at different coordinates, the missile recalculates instantly. New bearing 060, new distance 48 miles, new heading required, adjust 15 degrees right, maintain speed, arrival time now 5.23 minutes. That recalculation happens continuously as new data arrives. The missile is always flying toward where the target is now, not where it was when the weapon launched. The mid-course correction capability is what separates NSM from legacy anti-ship missiles. The weapon carries a two-way data link that communicates with launching platform, aircraft, satellites, or other sensors tracking the target. 20 seconds after launch, the missile is 3 miles downrange. Satellite imagery updates the target's position. The ship has maneuvered 15 degrees from previous course. The missile receives coordinates, recalculates, and adjusts heading. 2 minutes later, another update. The ship turned again. The missile corrects again. This process repeats throughout mid-course flight, ensuring the weapon continuously flies toward current target position rather than outdated coordinates. And here's what makes it tactically devastating. The ship doesn't know the missile is correcting. The cruiser's captain executes evasive maneuvers thinking he's creating missed distance. He is, temporarily. But every maneuver is tracked by sensors, feeding data to the incoming missile. The missile compensates for each evasion. The captain thinks he's defeating the attack through superior seamanship. He's actually just burning fuel while the missile adjusts course to match his movements. The frequency of updates depends on available sensor coverage. With satellite, airborne radar, and other platforms tracking the target, updates can occur every 30 to 60 seconds. The missile's trajectory is continuously refined based on real-time target location. If sensor coverage is degraded or communications are jammed, the missile continues on last known trajectory using autonomous navigation. It doesn't fail. It just operates with less current information until data link is restored or terminal phase begins. That graceful degradation is critical. The missile doesn't become useless if mid-course updates stop. It falls back to internal navigation and continues the mission. Correction capability improves success probability, but isn't mandatory for function. The terminal phase is where NSM becomes genuinely revolutionary. As the missile approaches the target area, autonomous systems take over completely. No external updates, no human guidance. The missile makes every decision independently. The imaging infrared seeker activates at approximately 10 to 15 miles from target. This isn't a simple heat-seeking sensor. It's an infrared camera that builds thermal images of everything in the search area. Ships appear as thermal signatures against cold ocean. Engines create hotspots. Exhaust stacks glow bright. The superstructure radiates heat differently than water. The IR seeker sees all of this and constructs a thermal picture of the battlefield. But here's the challenge. Multiple ships might be present. The target cruiser might be operating with escorts or transiting near commercial traffic. The missile must identify which thermal signature corresponds to its actual target. This is where target discrimination becomes critical, and NSM excels at it. The missile's computer stores reference profiles for ship classes, thermal signatures, radar cross-sections, size, and configuration. As the seeker scans detected ships, the computer compares what it sees to stored references. Cruiser thermal profile, large central heat source from gas turbines, elevated superstructure, specific length-to-width ratio. Destroyer profile, similar but smaller, different superstructure configuration. Merchant vessel, diesel engines, different heat distribution, commercial superstructure. The missile evaluates each contact, eliminates non-matches, locks the ship that best fits target parameters, all autonomously in seconds. And if multiple ships match the target profile, say 3 destroyers in formation, the missile selects based on priority. Largest radar cross-section usually indicates command ship, that gets priority, or the missile targets the ship closest to its approach vector to minimize time defenders have to react. These decisions are programmed into targeting algorithms before launch, but execution is autonomous. The missile applies decision logic without asking permission or waiting for authorization. The terminal approach is where course correction becomes most critical. Ships making emergency turns at this range are executing their last-ditch evasion. Hard over at maximum rudder, maximum speed, trying to change aspect angle before the missile arrives. Traditional missiles with simple terminal seekers would track the ship's current position and fly toward it. But in the 20 to 30 seconds, the missile needs to close terminal distance. A ship turning hard at 30 knots changes position significantly. Aim where the ship is, and you hit where it was. The ship's already moved. NSM predicts. The computer analyzes target motion, speed, heading, turn rate. It calculates where the ship will be in 20 seconds based on observed movement, and it aims at that predicted position, not current position. This is proportional navigation on steroids. Not just compensating for target motion, but predicting target maneuvers and adjusting intercept geometry accordingly. A destroyer turns hard to starboard. The missile detects the turn rate, 10 degrees per second, projects forward. In 20 seconds, the destroyer will have turned 200 degrees, adjusts aim point to where the stern will be when the missile arrives, not where the bow is now. The destroyer completes its turn. The missile is already there, arriving at exactly the point the ship's evasion maneuvered it to. The captain thought he was evading. He was actually maneuvering directly into the impact point the missile predicted. That prediction capability is why evasive maneuvers that worked against older missiles fail against NSM. The old doctrine, turn hard just before impact, assumed missiles couldn't compensate quickly enough. NSM compensates before you finish the turn. The sea skimming altitude adds another layer of difficulty for defenders. NSM flies at 15 to 30 feet above the waves during terminal approach. At that altitude, radar horizon for ship-based systems is approximately 12 to 15 miles. The missile pops up on radar 12 miles out. Impact occurs 80 seconds later. That's the entire engagement timeline for close-in defenses. Barely time to launch interceptors. Definitely not time for multiple engagement attempts. And NSM maneuvers during sea skimming approach, not just flying straight and level, but executing waypoint navigation around islands, through fjords, or along coastlines to approach from unexpected vectors. Defenders might expect approaches from open ocean, standard missile trajectory. NSM flies 50 miles along the coast, then turns 90 degrees to strike from inshore. The ship's defenses are oriented seaward. The missile arrives from land. That tactical flexibility comes from GPS waypoint navigation combined with terrain following algorithms. The missile can navigate complex routes, correcting course around obstacles while maintaining track toward moving targets. And all of this happens autonomously. The missile makes routing decisions based on pre-programmed preferences and real-time sensor data. Humans establish broad parameters, approach from north, avoid this defense zone, but the missile determines exact execution. The countermeasures resistance is substantial. Ships deploy chaff to create false radar returns. NSM uses imaging infrared as primary terminal sensor. Chaff is invisible to infrared. Ships deploy infrared decoys burning hotter than the ship. NSM's imaging system sees the decoy and recognizes it as a point source inconsistent with ship thermal profiles. The computer eliminates it as false target. Ships execute violent maneuvers. NSM predicts them and adjusts intercept geometry. Ships deploy electronic warfare to jam GPS and communications. NSM operates autonomously in terminal phase. Jamming is irrelevant once the seeker activates. Every traditional countermeasure that works against older missiles is either ineffective or only partially effective against NSM. The system was designed specifically to defeat known defensive tactics. The warhead is optimized for penetration before detonation. Ships have armored citadels protecting critical systems. Surface detonations damage superstructure but often don't mission kill the ship. NSM's warhead uses a delayed fuse. It penetrates the hull before detonating. The explosion occurs inside the ship, damaging internal systems, starting fires in magazines and machinery spaces, causing secondary explosions. A 275-pound warhead detonating internally causes substantially more damage than a 500-pound warhead detonating externally. The shape penetrator punches through steel plating. The high explosive detonates inside. The ship is destroyed from within. The operational employment changes naval tactics significantly. With NSM, you don't need to fire salvos of 10 missiles hoping 3 hit. You fire 2 or 3 NSM missiles with high confidence, all will hit because they correct throughout flight. That changes magazine economics. Instead of expending 10 missiles per target, you expend 2 to 3. Your limited magazine capacity services more targets. Your frigate carrying 8 NSM missiles can engage 3 to 4 targets instead of 1. Force multiplication through ammunition efficiency. Not carrying more missiles, but making each missile more effective through superior guidance. The international adoption reflects confidence in the system. Norway, Poland, Germany, Malaysia, United States. The U.S. Navy selected NSM as over-the-horizon weapon for littoral combat ships and Constellation-class frigates. When the United States, with access to every missile technology globally, chooses NSM, that's validation. The weapon works, and it works better than American alternatives for certain missions. Poland ordered coastal defense batteries armed with NSM. The Baltic Sea has narrow straits and confined waters where traditional long-range missiles are less effective. NSM's ability to navigate complex terrain and correct against maneuvering targets makes it ideal for littoral warfare. Malaysia operates NSM on fast attack craft. Small boats with limited magazines need weapons that hit reliably. They can't afford to waste shots on missiles that miss because targets maneuvered. The testing is extensive. Live fire exercises against maneuvering targets, electronic warfare environments, and multi-ship formations. Success rates exceed 85% in realistic scenarios, far higher than legacy systems against the same targets. One test involved a destroyer executing maximum evasive maneuvers while deploying all available countermeasures: chaff, infrared decoys, electronic jamming, violent turns, everything doctrine prescribes for defeating missile attack. NSM hit anyway. The terminal seeker discriminated real target from decoys. The guidance predicted evasive maneuvers. The missile arrived at impact point regardless of what the ship did to evade. That test result terrified naval planners globally. If evasive maneuvers don't work and countermeasures don't work, how do you defend ships against weapons this smart? The answer is layered defense fired early. Don't let NSM reach terminal phase. Intercept it at 50 plus miles with SM-2 or SM-6. Engage during mid-course before terminal correction becomes a factor, but that requires detecting the missile at long range. And NSM has reduced radar cross-section through shaping and materials. Detection ranges are shorter than expected, giving defenders less time to engage. The strategic implications are profound. And navies built around large surface combatants face weapons that reliably hit those combatants despite evasive maneuvers and countermeasures. A Chinese Type 055 cruiser costs $900 million. An NSM costs approximately $2 million. Expending 3 NSM missiles to sink a $900 million cruiser is extraordinary cost exchange, and smaller nations can field credible anti-ship capabilities. Norway can threaten Russian surface groups. Poland can control Baltic Sea lanes. Malaysia can defend its waters, all with relatively small inventories of highly effective missiles. The power projection advantage historically held by large navies diminishes when small nations field weapons that reliably kill expensive ships. The future development is incremental but significant. Extended range variants reaching 200 plus nautical miles. Enhanced artificial intelligence for target discrimination. Integration with loyal wingman drones that provide targeting data. And cooperative engagement where multiple NSM missiles share sensor data and coordinate attacks. Launch 4 missiles at 4 different targets. Mid-flight, retarget all 4 to the highest value threat based on autonomous evaluation. The missiles negotiate among themselves which one engages which target, ensuring no redundancy while maximizing overall mission success. That autonomous cooperation is possible because each missile has the computational power and sensor capability to make independent decisions. They're not projectiles, they're autonomous weapons platforms that happen to be expendable. The anti-ship missile that corrects itself against moving targets represents more than incremental improvement. It's a fundamental shift in anti-ship warfare. For decades, the equation favored defenders. Maneuver and you create missed distance. Deploy countermeasures and you spoof seekers. Jam communications and missiles lose guidance. NSM breaks that equation. Maneuver and the missile corrects. Deploy countermeasures and imaging sensors see through them. Jam communications and autonomous systems continue the mission. 13 feet long, 900 pounds, $2 million, and guidance systems that predict where you're going before you complete the maneuver that takes you there. That's not a missile. That's an autonomous hunter that launches toward approximate coordinates, corrects throughout flight based on updated targeting, and independently selects and engages the right ship among multiple contacts. The cruiser captain turns hard to evade. Then the missile predicted the turn and adjusted aim point. The captain deploys decoys. The missile's imaging sensor sees through them. The captain jams GPS. The missile navigates autonomously. Every defensive tactic fails because the weapon was designed specifically to defeat those tactics. And when evasion becomes impossible, when countermeasures are ineffective, when the best seamanship in the world can't create missed distance because the missile corrects faster than ships can maneuver, naval warfare fundamentally changes. The side with smarter missiles wins. Not faster missiles, not bigger missiles. Smarter missiles that think faster than targets can evade. That's what self-correction means, not just adjusting course, predicting movement, anticipating evasion, arriving at where the target will be, not where it was or where it is, but where it's going. And when missiles know where you're going before you get there, the only defense is not being there when they arrive, which requires speed ships don't have and maneuverability physics doesn't allow. The missile corrects itself, the target cannot. And that asymmetry is why the Naval Strike Missile rewrites the rules of anti-ship warfare, because the weapon that adjusts faster than targets move is the weapon that never misses. And in naval combat, never missing is the only statistic that matters.